Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the Building a Super Credibility Kit webinar. There's a ton of information in this presentation. You are free to take notes if you'd like to. I will provide this presentation to you all at the end of the call. I will also provide you my own credibility kit from back in the day. To do this presentation for you today, I actually went through my archives and looked up the original one I did for myself. And I will give that to you guys as well, just maybe as a place to start and jog your memory, or jog your memory about this conversation. There's also plenty of examples in this deck too about that are snippets from my own presentation, so you can kind of get a feel of what you need to do as well. And of course, mine was done, I think, back in 2007 or 8. And so feel free to embellish, change things. Technology is a lot better, word processing is a lot better. You can do plenty of things to spruce it up versus the one I'll show you. But you'll get the general idea and you can just roll from there. So with that, let's go ahead and get started here. Need to figure out how to move there we go. Okay, so a very brief, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes at the beginning of this talking about private lending in general. We learned from Jillian at Monday night's meeting a little bit about private lending, what our private lenders are looking for, and that type of thing. But I'm just going to expand on that just a tiny bit. There are really 5 steps to private lending success. The first is you're building credibility, you're generating leads, then you secure your private lenders once you have some credibility and some leads. You buy and sell a property with that lender, you receive a payday, and magically your credibility increases. So when you get started working with private lenders and borrowing from private lenders, your credibility is really small. Usually you just have a few deals in the hopper, maybe only one private lender at the time, and this circle, I'll call it, is very small. What winds up happening is that once you do one successful cycle of this circle here, all of a sudden everything gets bigger. Your credibility improves. The number of leads you can generate, that's based on your marketing, but because you've got more credibility, you've got the ability, presumably the knowledge, to generate more leads. You can get more private lenders or more funds from those private lenders. And the circle just keeps going and going and going. I like to think of it as kind of the ripple effect. Each cycle on this circle just expands your profile bigger and bigger and bigger. So start small. That's the key here. Start very, very small, maybe just one private lender, and before you know it, you'll have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And your whole business will start to pick up speed. So that is the truth about what happens in private lending. Fill in the blank. You guys can practice your chat board here. No blank, no money. What do you think the answer is there? Maybe I'll unmute you guys for just a second and you can shout out some answers. You've got Deira says no credibility, no money. Anybody else?
I was going to say credibility.
Credibility? Okay, anybody else?
What about opportunity?
No opportunity? Okay. Darian says no credibility. Anybody else?
Yes, if you don't have a good opportunity, then you can't get any money.
Opportunity? Okay, I'm going to throw something else out there. Everybody's going back on mute for a second. I'm going to throw something else out there. The real answer to this here is no trust, no money. That's really the key to this entire private lending thing. Trust, you'll see on the next slide, is actually the first ingredient of credibility. So if there isn't any trust, you don't even get the opportunity to try to build credibility. And that's something to really keep in mind as we're going through this and the purpose of the credibility kit. The #1 objection or concern of potential lenders is that they don't trust you. So you never even make it out of the gate because they don't trust you for some reason. And that's just something also to be aware of when you're getting into private lending. What we're trying to do is build trust, and that enables us to start earning credibility. I found this graphic online here, and I thought it was sort of interesting, so I threw it up here to show you guys. If trust is the #1 factor in our 2 paths to credibility here, if trust is the first one, and that's really, they say it's the innate factor in the ethics. It's that gut feeling you have about a person when you first meet them. You don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about their qualifications. You don't know anything about their history. You just have this innate feeling of whether you trust them. They may be a family friend and you've heard something, hey, maybe they dated somebody or something completely irrelevant. But it's that trust factor, that initial gut reaction that people are looking at, that people are taking into consideration when they even decide if they're going to consider doing business with you at all. Once you move beyond the trust factor, if you're successful enough at earning trust, then you can earn respect. And the respect is earned through action. This is where they're looking at, hey, I trust this person. Now, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse or not, but I trust this person and I respect them because they're competent. They've done some deals. They know what they're talking about. They're involved in this real estate, sport of real estate investing. They have competence, and now they've earned my respect for what they do. And that can drive to credibility on its own. Without trust and without respect, you can't make it to credibility. But I love this graphic because the first pathway here shows something very different. And this is another way to credibility. And I think it's often underrated as well. You can first have trust, you feel good about somebody, and then you have a common connection with them. Once you have a common connection, they think you're likable, and likable instantly builds credibility. I have lent to both kinds of lenders before. There are people who knew nothing about me, or excuse me, I have borrowed from these lenders before. There are people who knew nothing about me, but they liked me. They actually just thought I was a funny person, and I seemed relatively intelligent. So they put me in the likability category, and I immediately earned credibility because of that. I've also lent to other people who are maybe more business-minded, and they trust me for some reasons, because they've done business or they know me or something like that. They're impressed by what I've done, and I would say that this group of people is usually my friends. My friends that I have borrowed from fall into this category. They consider themselves smart business people, and although we're friends and they trust me, I had to earn credibility by showing them what I had done. It wasn't a likability factor. They already liked me. They waited 2 years to see what I had done before they were willing to engage and start working with me, because I earned their credibility through the actions that I took. So I do think that this is relevant, and then to share with you, because there's 2 different ways at it, and you have to know who your investors are that you're potentially targeting, which path they're potentially going after, to know how to speak to them correctly. I will tell you that in pathway 1, where it's the likability factor, these are often people that are just scared of numbers. I'm going to just generically lump them in that pattern there. They're people who really, I've got some money in a 401k, I don't know anything about it, I don't want to know anything about it, all I know is I need some money. And they're either going to invest with you because they like you or not. And so those are people who generally have no financial acumen at all, and they're completely going to go shoot from the hip and go with their gut. That's okay too. They're still qualified lenders. They just have to be aware of what they're getting into, and that is the pathway they're going to take. So I think this is valuable to just be aware of when you're considering your 2 types of lenders. I just put this thing at the bottom here saying don't underestimate likability. In either track, likability is not optional. whether you have done thousands of deals and you've got the respect of everybody and their brother or not is irrelevant. If people don't like you, they will not invest with you. So likability is absolutely a key factor in both of these situations here. Building trust with private lenders. Private lenders look through many filters to establish trust. And again, we just mentioned that trust is the very first very first segment to earning credibility. So if you're considering earning trust here, they're looking before you've even had one conversation with them about your business and about lending. They're already looking at you through many filters and trying to determine if they've established their trust. I threw these up here because there are some things that people don't think about, but they are relevant nonetheless. To build trust, people are looking at things like shared interests. Do your kids go to the same school? Are you fraternity brothers? Do you go to the same church? Are you the same religion? Religion is a big deal for lenders, actually, a lot of them. They want to know like what you believe because to them that represents integrity. They're looking, are you a family person? Are you a single person? When I'm talking about shared interests here, I'm talking about things that are not related to business. This is hobbies, this is personal, and they're looking at all those things to evaluate whether you're, whether you're a good person or not. So don't underestimate the value of shared interests, and in communicating with people, make sure you know what their interests are, because if you know that they, used to play professional soccer and you're a professional, and you're a soccer player, hey, you've instantly got that bond and that connection, and that will go a long way for you when you're building your private lender base. Don't underestimate social media updates and posts. We all have friends out there on Facebook and other social media channels who post things that are maybe inappropriate. You've got to think that if you're going into the world of private lending, that people can and will go to your social media sites and take a look at you. They want to know what kind of person you are. They want to understand what makes you tick. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring what you put out there, and you're not putting anything that will certainly incriminate you on the private lending front. I put written and verbal communication skills. To me, this is very important. The reason I put this out here is because, again, your private lender may not know you other than casual or happenstance before you start to talk with them about private lending. But they've already determined whether you're trustworthy based on different factors. If you're going into the arena of private lending, you want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward, and written and verbal communication skills are important. Specifically, what I mean by this is that you want to, there are many people, especially the much younger people, who communicate via text for everything and do all of their written communications in the form of a text, whether it's an email, whether it's a letter, and you want to just make sure that you're always looking professional when you do that type of thing and you're communicating with people. Follow through. I think this one's really important too. Hey, you told your buddy that the buddy who's going to be a potential lender for you, that buddy knows you as somebody who never follows through with anything, or you tell him you'll be there on Saturday and you don't show up, or you're always late to different events. Follow through is really important because that's one of the criteria they're looking at too, to determine if you're trustworthy with their money long term. Physical appearance, I don't really have to talk to you guys about that. Obviously, we want to be professional, and be that as it may, people will definitely look at your physical appearance to determine whether you're trustworthy. Your personal reputation, again, this goes back to, hey, it has nothing to do with investing, nothing to do with anything, but maybe you're dating somebody with a bad reputation, or maybe you have had personal challenges in your life that are very public or something like that. People are looking through that lens and they're saying, I don't know, this person might not be trustworthy. Corporate image, do you have one or not, to me is key. If you're out there on Facebook and you've got your logo flying up there from time to time and you're proud of what you're doing, and tooting your own horn and everything like that. They're seeing that you've got a strong corporate image. You're very passionate about what you're doing, and that goes a long way with building trust. Punctuality and dependability. Hey, if you can't show up when you told them you would show up, or if you can't send the email when you told them you would send the email, why on earth are they going to bother to lend to you? For those of you that are landlords out there and who actually manage your own properties, if a tenant comes to you to rent a place and they're supposed to send in their application today by 3 o'clock and they don't send it in until Monday at 10 o'clock, that immediately sends a red flag to me. Hey, they aren't going to follow through with what they said. The likelihood of me wanting them as a tenant and them paying rent on time is very low. So just know that in your own personal life, these things matter too. And then finally, of course, your business reputation. That goes a long way as well. These are really important things to keep in mind as you're going forward. So the thought is, if you've passed that initial sniff test and you've passed that trust test, then you get to move on to stage 2, which is the respect stage, and that's really earning their respect through action. That's the point of the credibility kit. That's what gets you closer to earning the credibility that you need to eventually ink a deal with a potential lender. So the credibility kit, I need to make sure we're moving on and keeping on track here. The credibility kit, what I've got this set up is what it is and what it's not. It's hard documentation. It's something you can give people more than just the business card when you meet them. When you start talking to private lenders, it's very easy to say, and by the way, this isn't a document that you're going to sit there and review page by page with them. It's something to walk into a meeting, shake their hand, and hand it to them and say, you know what, I wanted you to have a copy of my document, whatever you're going to call your credibility kit. I wanted you to have a copy of my credibility kit so you can see what I've been doing and you can understand the business that I'm doing. And then you choose during your conversation to focus on the things that matter to your personal investor, depending on which route they have, if they're the likability guys or if they're the guys that want to see the facts and figures and the numbers. If they're track 2 and they're those guys that want to see how you're earning their credibility, you might take your credibility kit during your conversation and flip to a couple of pages and show them, hey, I've done all of these deals. And that gives concrete evidence that you've actually participated in the market. For the people who are going to lend to you on that likability factor, that stuff might scare them. So you might want to use a page in your credibility kit, maybe to just show them some before-after pictures and make them feel like they understand the business, even though they're scared to death of it. So it's hard documentation. It really is sort of a sales guide for you when you go to meet with people. I call it the brag book. When I first started putting mine together, the problem with it was I said, I'm brand new in investing. I've only been out here 3 years, and I've got nothing to put in it. Well, nothing is too small, that's for sure. Everything goes in this book, no matter how small or irrelevant you think it is. The way I kind of like to think about it is if you've put time into it, it needs to go into this book. That's the bottom line. You might think it's irrelevant, but put it in there anyways. For many of us, real estate investing is a second career. We are doing another full-time job, and this is on the side. So any affiliation we have, any licenses we've earned, anything like that we've done related to real estate investing needs to go in here, because we need to inform our lenders that these are things we've done outside of our day job. And it just makes us look more credible in that we're investing in our own education. It should include who you are, what you do, your image and branding. It's a compilation of your credentials. It's also your investing scorecard. It's a disclosure of any relevant facts, like Jillian was talking about the other day. If you filed for bankruptcy within the past 5 years, you probably need to disclose that. Anything that's relevant that could sway the mind of an investor does need to go in here. The credibility kit itself it will include additional resources that we'll talk about later, how lending itself works, and it should be very simple and straightforward. Now, what it is not a deal-specific funding request. It is not a resume. It's not a detailed financial document. It's not confusing, misleading, expensive to make, or overly complicated. And please keep this in mind as we go on to the next slide. When we say that it's not a complicated, we don't want it to be overly complicated or very detailed. This was another area I personally got hung up on. I have a corporate finance background, and I wanted to make sure that this thing looked like, you know, a major public offering from Bank of America or something. And the truth is that's exactly what it should not be. It should be very, very simple for your average investor to understand. So who are your potential lenders? And this is what you want to be aware of the whole time you're making this. This is what makes this building your credibility kit so simple. You need to make sure that it's in line with the financial acuity of the people that you're presenting to. You've got grandma. You've got the person still in corporate America who's working and not happy with their own investing returns. You've got a variety of people. The bottom line here is anyone is a potential lender. You don't want to assume that somebody does or does not have money. The people if you do assume, you will probably be wrong. The people who you suspect don't have any money are generally the ones that have tons, and they're also the ones that don't know what to do with the money. So it's just a general way of saying your potential lenders are really everywhere. This is a generic lender profile, and if this is for people who maybe have not been out there raising private funds yet. This is very, very generic. Obviously, there are variations on this and an entire gamut, but I'm just going to kind of cut right through the middle and tell you who I think most of the lenders are and what they look like. Again, this is important because as you're making your credibility kit, you're making it for this audience. So who is this for? This is for friends, family, and acquaintances. This is not for the general public. You want to start small, so you want to just get out there with the people you know in your own sphere of influence. This profile can also be used for other investors, but what I will tell you is that other investors, if I'm going to lend to you out of my self-directed IRA, I'm going to be a lot more focused on the numbers of the deal. So the presentation of me is going to be slightly different than it's going to be to your family, friends, and acquaintances. But for the most part, what we're trying to build here is a document that's specific for your family, friends, and acquaintances. These people, in general, have limited real estate investing acumen. They also, in general, have limited financial acumen. The truth is, if they had wonderful financial acumen or wonderful investing acumen, they may be out there doing this on their own, or they may be out there in another more productive investment than they are. So in general, these people are not overly sophisticated, and this certainly isn't intended to belittle anybody. It's just you need to be aware of who you're talking to. The thing that I've found that is most important to the investors I've personally worked with is their preservation of capital. More than anything, at the end of the day, I think if everything went wrong and they received not a penny in interest, they'd be okay with it as long as they got their capital back. For these private investors, especially the older folks, of course, nothing is more important than them returning their capital. And so that's a really critical point when we're discussing objections and discussing the critical points for them. Safety and security related to this and related to private lending is top of mind because more than anything, they want that capital back. They're obviously looking for a higher interest than their current options are, and some of them actually, not everybody, but some of them like the idea of saying, hey, I'm a real estate investor, even though they're passive investors and they're only just lending you money. they love the idea of being able to mix it up, you know, and tell their folks now they're investing in real estate. So it's sort of a perception thing on their part. And then you need to know that the cash flow requirements are different for different lenders. So if your profile or your sales documents really to your prospective lenders talk about giving them back a monthly return and paying interest on a monthly return, and they don't want a monthly return because they're a 40-year-old person who's just saving for retirement, that could be a challenge or a problem for them. What they care about is that balloon payment at the end that's much nicer, much fatter return. So be aware that depending on which lenders you're talking to, their cash flow requirements and payback options are going to be very different. So this is something you might, as you're talking about it, you might want to throw out options in your written documentation versus saying, I always return, I always pay monthly, or I always pay at the end of a deal. You need to understand what their interest is before you lay that out on paper. And then the most important thing you need to know about the lenders here is that they almost always have more cash than they initially told you they had, which is why every time you go around the circle once, that ripple effect gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because money comes out of the woodwork and magically an extra 100,000 appears, or magically Aunt Maud comes to the table with a whole bunch too. So this is, private investors, especially on a one-on-one deal, usually come in with the least amount you will ever see from them. Okay, here's my 8 credibility kit super rules. Make it simple, make it professional, make it organized. Let your graphics do the talking, because you don't want people to have to read an entire book. Toot your horn as loud as you can. Nothing is too small. Stay away from the numbers, and the only exception to that is one thing at the very end of your credibility kit that I'll talk about. But you do not want to use any numbers in your presentation at all, as a matter of fact, in my opinion. These are all my personal opinions and what has worked for me. Borrow content and resources, we'll talk about that, and then make sure you have great corporate branding and logo. I don't think corporate branding and a logo is optional at all. I think that is, if you're in the world of private lending, you must have a professional looking logo. Perception is reality, and that's to me is critical here. I threw in this slide to give you some examples of corporate branding resources. Most of you have a logo already, but for those of you that don't, these are just some really quick things I'll talk to you about here. 99designs.com charges a flat fee of $99. Basically, you go out there and say, I have a real estate investing business and I'm looking for a corporate branding package. And you pay $99, and many freelancers across internationally compete for your business. They will all do designs, and then you get to select out of maybe the 20, 30, or 40 designs that come back which one you want to work with. So if you have never done a corporate branding package, 99 Designs would be where I'd go, because you can get everything. You get the logo, you get the business card layout, you get the letterhead layout, you get the whole kit and caboodle all at the same time, and that's a great buy for it. Elance.com and odesk.com, some of you are probably using these guys for everything. You can find any virtual freelancer for anything out there right now. Video, audio, graphics, you name it, they're out there. But if you go out to Elance or Odesk, you can find virtual freelancers, and you can purchase their services a la carte, or you can just purchase an identity package. So prices totally vary here, but there's some extremely talented people on those sites too that can help you. Fiverr is another site. You can use this for a variety of things. Gigs, the work unit they have on Fiverr is called a gig, and all gigs start at $5. So there are people out there who say, I will make you a logo for $5, and they will. And you can also do other things on Fiverr as well, plenty of things. But just be aware that the $5, of course, doesn't buy much, and usually you have to pay a little bit more if you want the source file, which you absolutely will need. So gigs start there at $5. My only challenge with Fiverr is they are awesome for lots of stuff, and I use them actually even for LA South and to do other things as well. But just be aware that there are some lesser experienced freelancers out there too. That's why they're charging $5. So just depending on what you're doing, it's a good source to look through if you don't have your own image set out there yet. And then if you want to go the DIY method, then you can certainly go to either of these sites, logomaker.com or vistaprint.com. And both of them, they have an online software that can help you just select from a whole bunch of pre-done things, and you can pre-done images and colors and stuff like that, and you can just click, click, click your way to your own logo. Logomaker.com gives it to you for free. Vistaprint, you can design it for free, but then if you want the source file, you have to pay about 20 bucks. So there's lots of places to go get a professional-looking brand or professional-looking logo, and to me, it's not an option anymore not to have one. So we're going to go ahead and get into the actual document here. I want to see how I'm doing on time, except, wow, I don't have much time left, actually. Okay, we're going to get into the cover page of the actual document. So I call the Credibility Kit the entire folder that I demonstrated on Monday night. It's a folder of some kind that you're going to use to put all of your stuff in, whether your stuff be a CD, a business card, package of papers, or this document that I'm calling it. All of the items you're going to give to somebody in that one kit will be enclosed in the folder. But the report itself, or the document itself that you're going to give to somebody, this is the cover page of the one I made years ago. I called this document, with all of my credentials and everything, my corporate summary and success profile. So my words of advice are regarding cover page. Be sure to include a cover page. This is your cover of your standalone document, and so you want to make sure you've got a professional one, professional looking one there. Be creative to raise their interest. You want them to open the page, right? So you want to make sure that it's interesting enough for them to flip the page on it. Name your document. So this package of papers, this credibility thing that you've got here, like I said, I called mine the corporate summary and success profile. You need a name for yours too. You can steal that name. You can come up with something more creative. You just want to be able to reference it if you're talking to them on the phone. Hey, by the way, look at my corporate summary and success profile on page 3. You'll see X, Y, or Z. Give that thing a name. Make sure you include your contact information on here, and also maybe the date you started, if that's relevant. I have on mine acquiring investment grade real estate since 2004. I also had all of my contact information right there on the front too. And then, you know, my design was just something I made up at home one day on PowerPoint or Word or something. These were all houses that I had invested in. They were all ones that I had rehabbed, and I was proud of them. So that's another thing as you're going through your investing careers. Make sure you're taking great pictures of all of your properties, because they will be important for you later in as you're marketing. Okay, the next page in your document here should be a table of contents. I personally think it's very important to have one, because it makes you look organized, and it makes you look professional and organized. The sections that I have, when I did mine, you can see my table of contents there originally was overview and credentials, success gallery, certificates and licenses, testimonials, and recommendations. If I was doing this today, I would add a second section, and I would make sure that the two sections are split. They're still part of the same document, but they're split. It would be a 3-page section that would include a generic lending, a sample deal, and lending FAQ. So I would do, we'll talk about that later, but I would do basically a page for each of those. So if they are, if they're looking through this standalone document and they have questions about how it all works, they can either listen to the CD you provided them, or they can flip to this part 2 and take a quick look at it. So I'd probably include that information in there as well. The next thing, I put section dividers in all of my document as well. Adding section dividers, in my opinion, helps to organize you and organize the person reading it so that they know where they are in the scheme of things. And it also helps to bulk up your document, believe it or not, even if you, especially if you're brand new and you don't feel like you have a lot to put into the document. It gives the thing a little bit more weight when you're handing it to somebody. You have the option of printing your section dividers on white paper, or if you wanted to get real fancy, you could do them on color paper. My only concern about doing color paper, although visually it looks nice, and the idea here is that this is a hard document, is that you want to make sure it is also a document that could be scannable, easily produced, and whatnot. So making them in on colored paper might be more trouble than it's worth. But it's totally up to you however you want to present yours. But I do make one section divider for each of the sections that you're going to have. And of course, feel free to name your sections whatever you want to name them. Okay, we're getting into the content now. This is what I would put if I'm looking here at my overview section. This is the content that I'm going to put in my overview section. We're going to start it with a corporate summary and a detailed business bio. Mine was a half a page, and you could see what it is. And like I said, I'm going to email you guys a copy of my old one so you can get an idea of it. I recommend that your corporate summary is about a half page long. If you've got really extenuating circumstances, then you can extend it to a whole page. But the idea is you want to include some highlights, including the year you started, what your business does, personal highlights or milestones you've achieved during your business so far. And you might want to touch on business ethics. There is going to be a whole section related to that, but you might just want to throw in a line here about your business, that you do business ethically, or how you do business, blah, blah, blah. Down toward the bottom of mine here, my third paragraph, I threw in something like HFRI, my company was called Home Free Realty Investments, still is, believes that ethics and profitability are highly compatible. From the craftsmanship and the renovation work to the dealings with buyers, sellers, investors, and tenants, HFRI adheres to the highest ethical standards in every aspect of business. So you can throw something short and sweet in there about ethics in your corporate summary. It doesn't hurt to overdo that particular aspect of it. The next slide here, again in the overview section. So the way mine was set up is I had the overview page. This was one page. The top half of it was the corporate summary. The bottom half of it was me. I was a team of one, a company of one. So I highlighted myself, and this would be the area where you would introduce your team. It's a short bio about you, your partners, or your employees. You want to showcase your credentials. I would personally add a professional headshot picture. I didn't have that in my first version, but I would do that now. And then you want to make sure for all the founders, what you're writing in this little segment of your bio includes why you got started in real estate investing, maybe how you got started. I got started because I worked with Habitat for Humanity, so I threw that in there just because it's an interesting story about how I got started. What motivates you, if you've got any long-term goals or personal details. I got into investing, you can read in here because I've learned about it when I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, blah, 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 blah. I started with only $500 of my own money, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, I talk about how by the age of 45, I want to establish and operate a philanthropic foundation. Those are goals for me. And so those kind of things, a very high-level bio of yourself is important. Similarly, if you want to put anything personal in there, you've got a family, you live in this area, you can certainly put all that in there too. It's totally up to you what you feel comfortable putting in there as your own bio. But I'd keep it short and sweet, again, a half page to a page, put a picture in there, and that'll take care of that section. Also in the overview section, this is where you want to have your company philosophy. This is that piece about your commitment to integrity, your resolution to give back to the community, either and how you do it. You solve problems for people, you provide affordable housing, you help people become homeowners through creative financing. Whatever your strategy is, as investors, we're all doing a service for somebody. We're making money at it too, but we're providing a service. And so that's what you want to focus on in this section about what service you're offering and how you're giving back to the community. And then you also want to talk about your dedication to employing local professional contractors. I don't know, I don't know how you say it, but something, you're using documented official contractors if that's your business model too. I mean, don't overstate anything, of course. If it's not true for your business and you go use your cheapest labor you can find, don't put anything in there about this particular element. But anything you can add that talks about your integrity and talks about your business your business ethics is really important. Okay. The next section, this is also in your overview section. You want to list out affiliations, licenses, and speaking engagements. So for your affiliations, mine was very simple at the time. I had these three, I actually didn't have any speaking engagements. All I had was affiliations and licenses and certificates. So I put the licenses and certificates and I put a whole bunch of white space on the page, and down below it I listed all of my affiliations as well. But your affiliations include nonprofit, trade association like the RIA, alumni networks, volunteer roles, any board memberships or positions that you've had, Chamber of Commerce you belong to, anything that's relevant to real estate or can build that credibility / likability for you. I think almost anything you've got goes on here in terms of affiliations. There's very little I would exclude. You might be part of AYSO soccer or something else, some other kind of seemingly unrelated thing. I might put it in there anyways because, again, you're looking for those common connections with people and that likability factor. So there's more to you than just business, and so you might want to include that stuff as well. Licenses and certifications, I put any kind of professional licenses you have there, and then also anything you receive through education or testing. I'd also put a local business license in that category too. Again, on this page for me, I just listed them out and put the year I received them. In the back of the manual is where I put a physical scan of each one of those things to build that credibility. And again, it added some more pages to a otherwise very thin book that I had at the time. And then if you've done any kind of speaking engagements where you've been the guest speaker, no matter how small it is, no matter how insignificant, you want to put the dates, the location, and whatnot on there too. Okay, the next thing you have here is real estate investing, education, and training. For most people, their resumes, they get to go ahead and throw on there that they, where they were educated and the school and the year and the degree and all that business. But the truth is that we've all invested in our real estate investing education quite a bit too. And the easiest way I found to lay this out was actually in two segments. Boot camps, conventions, and coaching programs where they were either long-term in nature or they were entire weekend events or entire week events. I listed all of those out. I put the mentor, the event, the years attended, and the location. And this really shows that you're making your own investment in education. And you might not think you have a lot of this, but I challenge you to start writing them down. You'll have a long list too. In addition, the second section I had on here as well was seminars. So what I used seminars for was if I took a Saturday session, a Saturday seminar where I listened to somebody talk about something for 8 hours or 16 hours, I would put that seminar in there as well. So I'd list the speaker name, the seminar topic, and the hours attended. So like I said, I split this education section up into two segments, one for long-term coaching programs, and then the second section was for seminars, and that just listed literally the same kind of information, but instead of giving a location, it just gave the number of hours. Again, you'll see all that in the worksheet I sent to you. And then any online training I think is relevant too. You can toss in there anything that you've taken also. The next thing we're still in the overview section actually, is professional experience and education. So this is the closest thing this is the closest thing you're going to get to a resume in this whole thing. This is how I listed mine out. Both of these went on the same page, and this was all that was on that page. Professional experience at the top and education at the bottom. I listed at that time I had these employers, Delta Airlines and Bank of America. I listed my job title and the different groups that I was with, and that was it. I would probably do this a little bit different today. My whole professional experience was in corporate finance. I was a corporate finance executive. So I would probably just, before I started with the details of the jobs that I had here, I'd probably just highlight right under professional experience 1 to 2 sentences summarizing the line of work I'm in and leave it at that. I don't want most people who read this stuff, they have no idea what Vice President of Finance, Service and Fulfillment Ops means. And so if it's not meaningful to my lenders, it probably shouldn't be on there. So I probably would do this very different than I did back in the day. Maybe I would just put Vice President Finance, something like that. I would make it a lot less detailed for people. And then again, in the education section, I would also just put the school, the degree, and the date earned. Very sweet, short and sweet there. Personally, I'd recommend to include only college and graduate degrees here. And if you don't have any, extended education, then just leave that segment off. It's not relevant. If you've got it, throw it in here. If you don't worry about it. I'm giving you as much as I possibly can, so you can pick and choose what works for you. That is the end of the first initial overview. So you can see just by flipping through this, it's physically to build this, other than the first page where you talk about a little bit about your own bio, everything else is just little short list. So it's very quick to actually put this all together. And that's really the meat of the entire deck. The second piece I have, or the second segment I have in second section in my own credibility book, was this thing called the Success Gallery. And you can do this any way you want, but essentially all you're showing is your before afters of your homes. This gives people a visual reference. Hey, this is what I do. Look, I took this ugly house, I made it cute. And I would put at the top, I put the address, I put what it was, and then I put in one sentence what I did. A full interior, exterior, and landscape renovation completed in 5 weeks. So I showed the ugly house to the cute house. I showed the ugly kitchen to the cute kitchen. I put 4 pictures on each of these pages, 4 different things. I think I showed a bathroom and something else on here as well. But you can design these any way you want. The whole idea in your own success gallery is to just make sure that you're showing some before-afters of the work that you've done. If you don't have any yet, or you haven't done any at all, then leave this section out. You don't have that yet. But if you have done any of them, find some pictures and do the best you can to show people the kind of work that you do. This really showcases the quality of the work, and it also shows that you have pride in the work that you're doing. I would probably do 2 to 3 pages of these different houses, make sure there's a variety of them, maybe in different settings and whatnot. Okay. In this same section called Success Gallery, after I showed the before-after pictures, I threw 1 page together, and all I did was put on one side of the page my purchases and on the other side of the page my sales. And if you've only had 3 or 4, again, throw them on there. That's totally okay. If you're investing out of state, you can put the reason I put the address and the city in there was so people could see where the properties were at. But you'll be able to see shortly, real estate transactions start to add up really quick, especially if you're wholesaling or if you're doing renting or anything like that. You're going to see multiple of them very quickly. and this looks impressive. So make sure you just list them out. Again, it's not complicated to make. It's just pretty darn basic, but it's one more thing saying, hey, this person's in the market. They're moving and shaking. And again, don't worry if your list only has a few things on it. A few things is better than none, and people need to know about them. The next section after the success gallery for me is licenses and certificates. And this section is easy to create also because it's nothing more than scans of paperwork you already have. I had my real estate license in North Carolina, in Georgia, and then I had earned a national PHP certification from the National RIA. So I scanned all of those certificates and I put them in there. That added 3 more pages into my credibility kit. I recommend that you label each of the documents up at the top, as you can see in the red circles, because when people look at something, look at these certificates, they don't know what they're looking at, and they're not going to spend the time to read through the whole thing. Just tell them what they're looking at the beginning, and I think it's a better first impression. They don't have to hunt for it. They'll know what it is they're looking at. But this is additional credibility for the things that you have. And again, don't worry about if you don't have lots of professional licenses. Something you need to be aware of is that if you've attended training classes or if you've attended boot camps or whatnot, one of the things that some folks have done in private lending is they create their own certificates. You've been to that, wholesaling 101 boot camp and stuff like that. Put it all together. Set it all up. Go buy yourself some certificates and create a certificate for it. You've attended. It's just further documentation. Whether or not it was signed by the person who did the training is irrelevant. You can still create your own certificate on your own and make it look very official, and that gives you additional credibility as well. So after you've finished with your visuals of your of your licenses and certifications, the next section I have in mind is testimonials and letters of recommendation. I suggest that you get at least 3. And you want a variety the 3 should be from different sources. In my personal book, I had 1 from a tenant, I had 1 from a realtor, and I had 1 from a tenant, 2 from realtors, 1 that I bought with, 1 that I sold with, and 1 from a previous private lender. So I had 4 different ones, but you can get sources for your testimonials or of your letters of recommendation can be tenants, motivated sellers, buyers, realtors, other investors, coaches, current private lenders, satisfied homeowners, vendors, and tradespeople. The last point on this, actually the second to last point on here is pre-plan the content of your letters. We all know what we're trying to communicate in our kit, and when I approached my sources for my letters or the testimonials, it's when you approach people to give you a letter of recommendation, the first thing they'll probably say is, what do you want me to say? And so if you think about this before you approach them, it will go much easier. They'll be happier for it and you'll be happier for it. What you want to consider is okay, if my foreman or my crew leader for my rehabs is going to talk about one element of my business, then maybe this person, the tenant that I have, should talk about another element of my business, perhaps my punctuality, how responsive I am to getting their repairs done, blah 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 blah. Maybe the tradespeople are going to talk about how you only use the finest in materials, or you're very picky about what you do, and blah 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 blah. So think about the different elements and intersections that these different groups of people will have, and really do put some thought into who you're going to ask for those letters of recommendation and what you want them to say. I guarantee you, as a person who has to write a lot of letters of recommendation, when they tell me what they want me to say, I never have a problem. When I just have to pull it out of the air, I never know which way to go with it. So do them a favor. They're doing you a favor. Do them a favor and tell them what to write. If you can get their letters on letterhead and or hand signed, To me, that appears more credible, but anything will work. If somebody's emailed you something, copy the email, put it on a page. Something that you can scan and include in here as well. And it's okay if there's various formats. Don't worry about that. And then, like I said, I use a scanned version of the email or a letter or whatever I have to help give me that additional credibility. Let's see. We talked about what we just covered is the entire, and I know we're probably out of time or really close to it. What we talked about here was the private lending, or excuse me, was the whole section, the first section, the meat of your entire booklet. The second part here I mentioned at the very beginning, I would probably today add a section about private lending. I call it Private Lending 411. And in your private lending, I would probably want to add 3 sheets in there. I did not do this with mine, so I don't have an example, but it's fairly simple to do. The first part would be just generic details of your lending program. What you use the money for, you know, are you using it for your own business? Are you, or, you know, operating expenses, or are you using it specifically, you know, I buy houses and I use their money for the down payment, purchase, and renovations, just generically what you use the money for. Second, the security of the investment. Hey, you know, when I borrow money, I always give people first position, blah, 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 blah. Talk about rate ranges. I would not specify any specific rate range. Or excuse me, a specific rate. I would offer a rate range. A rate range you might give right now would be something along the lines of 3 to 9%. That way, if you offer somebody, you know, people might say, oh, I want 9%. And you say, well, on that particular property, the risk is not that high, so it's a 7% property or whatever. But you give people a range of where you're going to be in, what your return is going to be. Again, this is where you want to put in there, you've got options for repayment, because everybody needs their cash returned in a different manner. So don't assume anything here. And then give them, in general, the turn time. You know, if you're just going to use their money, if your long-term strategy is to borrow the money and then refinance out because this is a hold property that you want, then tell them, yeah, I intend to refinance out in 6 months. In general, that's what you do. Keep this section, though, very, very, very generic, because it's not committing you to anything. When you talk with them down the road about funding a specific deal, that is separate. That's a separate conversation. It's started by this book here, but it is a separate conversation that you're going to have with them about a very specific deal and very specific terms on that specific deal. This generic credibility kit is just supposed to be that, generic. It's supposed to give them an introduction to who you are and the kind of business you're doing. I would put together a lender FAQ, anticipate and address the objections that are going to come up. Hey, what if the house burns down? Hey, blah, blah, blah. Am I sure to get my money back? What will happen with this? There are certain things that every lender is going to ask, and so make sure that you put those into an FAQ kind of an FAQ format, and people can use that as well. I mean, maybe if we get this together, I haven't done it myself, but if we put something like this together, maybe it's something we'd be willing to share among each other. And then I would do a sample deal where you showed the numbers. Show them how the numbers work, but keep it very, very, very high level. For those of you who were at the meeting on Monday, it could be boiled down to one slide. The slide that I showed, actually that Sean showed us, he said, here was the house, put a picture of the house, the sales price was this, the purchase, you know, the purchase price was this, the rehab was this, the holding costs were this, and the sales price was this. And, you know, then you could break out the holding costs and say, well, the holding costs included the return I paid, the commissions I paid to real estate agents, and then the amount I paid to my lender, and show them where their piece of the action is going to come from. That's up to you if you want to show that, but sometimes people want to see a practical example of what that looks like. So you can either use a deal you've done, or you can use a just make up numbers on a deal and say this is what a generic deal would look like, and show them in the numbers how you would buy at 70% ARV and that type of thing, so they understand a little bit more about your business model. This section should be really small. Again, the whole credibility kit is not about beating them over the head asking them for money. It's just going to be there for their reference if they want it, and it's going to be at the end. Other content you can include, other items that can be actual in the physical document, could be things like press releases, special reports, press releases about your business, special reports that might be relevant, any kind of local publicity maybe you've personally received, and maybe some of your top marketing pieces so people can understand what your business looks like. That might be a small section in your kit, in your document itself. And then other items that I would include in the kit, this is the overall folder, would be perhaps the CD for private lenders. I might include a brochure on the self-directed IRA, so you could contact UDirect IRA, Car and Hall, or any of the other self-directed IRA providers, and they have marketing materials. You can just slip one of their brochures in there or slip one of their CDs in there, because if the conversation comes up with somebody about self-directed, you've got a resource for them to offer. And companies like UDirect are happy to give you marketing materials all day long regarding their services. You want to include your business cards. Again, I put white papers and special reports. And then if there's relevant news articles about real estate in your market right now, you might have seen something in the LA Times that, Redondo Beach is moving, real estate is hot right now. Okay, so you might want to include that little snippet in your kit that you're giving them as well. Anything that's relevant and related and can help promote your business too. The exterior packaging, we talked about this very, very briefly, and I know I'm way out of time. The exterior packaging, we talked about a little bit at the meeting also on Monday. You can kind of go different routes, but the thought is all the same. You can use any kind of hard-sided cardstock folder. You can use any kind of a binder like I've got over here on the left side, the brown one on the left side, or you can even use, they make these poly folders these days, so you can slip everything into and then take this elastic band and close it in the front. This is all specific to whatever your budget is. You can get as fancy as you want or not. I probably recommend going with the folder approach, but I would suggest a couple of things. There are cheap folders, which are pretty flimsy, and then there are some really heavy stock ones, like the one I had actually at the meeting. It's a real thick folder. They're not that expensive, actually, maybe a couple bucks a piece, but they're really thick and not the flimsy kind. I recommend going with something that's got a little bit of bite to it. And then if you can, unlike the ones that I have in the picture here, there's a lot of folders that are made that have a little security tab on the top, so you slip the papers underneath the security tab so they don't fall out. I'm a big proponent of, once this booklet or your document is in there, it's going to be heavy. There's going to be a lot attached. You don't want this stuff flying out and moving all over the place. So whatever you choose to use as your presentation folder, make sure the stuff's going to stay in it. What I recommend in terms of branding on the outside, don't pay to have these presentation folders customized. They're very expensive to do, especially in low quantities. What I would recommend instead is just go the label route. You can either use color laser printed mailing labels, or you can, if you want to go really fancy, you can go get some die cut stickers made of your label and put them on the front, depending on what your budget is for this project. But I do think that the folder and the label of the folder are extremely important, because that is their first impression of your professionalism. And so make sure that you do invest a little bit of money in there and make them look as good as you can. Now, with respect, I don't have a slide on this, but with respect to actually printing your documents, I would recommend that you go have them done color printed or laser printed. I don't recommend doing inkjet printing. I just don't personally think that that looks very professional. If you get them done with a laser printer, they're a little shinier, they're glossier, and they just look better. And generally, if you have them done at a printer too, I go to AIM Printing over here on Aviation, and it's like 39 cents a page. If you have them printed, there's also a shine to the print, and the paper quality is thicker and nicer. So for this particular purpose, unless you're going to be doing thousands of these packages, I recommend that you probably get them printed as well. Again, they won't cost very much to do, and certainly not if you're going to get some money out of it from an investor. And then with respect to your actual document that's all got all your goodies in it, talking about your background and your success gallery and all of that, the document itself is going to need to be bound. Now, I think the first ones I did, I just threw a staple up in the corner and called it a day. But I know that other people have recommended that you either do a small spiral binding on them, or you can do one of these stapling on the edge, like you can see in the far left here, or you can glue them together too, depending on how much stuff you have in there and how much you want to show. Again, any of those options does cost money as well, so it just depends on what your budget is, how many you want to make, and how professional you want to look. But regardless of your binding style, be aware of that when you are actually buying your folders, because if you've got a spiral bound folder, it might fit better in a poly folder than it's going to fit in just a regular, peachy folder, 2-pocket style. It might not lay down well. So this is very, very, very common sense stuff, but just make sure that you're thinking of it. And then the last thing I would think of is that whatever you choose for your kit, make sure that you've got an option to mail it also. So you might want to just get one package also of mailing envelopes and mailing labels that you can customize also to mail this off if you need to. What will happen in your lending business is someone will tell someone who will tell someone, and you immediately want to get one of your packages in their hand. So I'll have somebody tell me on the phone, oh yeah, Lisa, I was talking to my buddy the other day and he's kind of interested in your lending. And I'll say, oh, do you happen to have his address? Yeah, I do. Boom. All of a sudden I have an address and contact information, and he's getting one of these in the mail with a nice note from me saying, by the way, I heard you might be interested. Here's some information about me. And again, the package itself isn't a hard sell. It's just merely informational. And then you can either follow up with them, or they might take the initiative to follow up with you too. So consider your mailing option when you're setting the whole thing up as well. So we are over time. I